It was supposed to be our 10th wedding anniversary. I had waited all day for David, but deep down I knew he would not come home on time. He had missed dinners, birthdays, even my mother's funeral. Why would tonight be any different? I sat at the dining table with 2 glasses of wine, the candles burning lower and lower, wax dripping like wasted years. My phone buzzed. Against my better judgment, I picked it up. Instagram, a new post, Emily Carter. Her caption read, "David's shirts always slip right off him." Underneath the words was a photo of his bare back. One I knew better than anyone, that familiar curve of the shoulders. The scar near his ribs from a skiing accident we survived together 10 years ago. My hands shook. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The room blurred. I almost dropped the phone, but then another vibration came. A call from my assistant at the clinic. "Claire, Dr. Miller, it's urgent," she whispered. "David is here again. He asked for you by name. Do you want me to tell him you're unavailable?" I froze. My husband didn't know. He never knew that for the past 3 years. The anonymous counselor he confided in was me. I had kept 2 secrets from him. One, that I ran a mental health clinic in downtown Manhattan. 2, that I had been his therapist all this time. Each time he requested me, I usually said no. I was terrified of breaking. But tonight, with Emily's post still burning in my eyes, I wanted to hear him. I wanted to know what a man sounded like after betraying his wife on their 10th anniversary. "I'll take the session," I said. My voice was flat. When I arrived, the room was already prepared, dim lights, the glass partition, the voice filter that disguised mine. 3 years of distance had kept me safe, until now. 30 minutes later, I saw his car pull up on the screen. He stepped out, adjusted his tie, then paused at the window. He tilted his head, catching sight of the faint red mark on his neck. The kind only a lover could leave. For a second, he smiled at his reflection, then, just as quickly, the smile dropped into irritation. He pulled the collar higher and walked inside. I sat frozen behind the one-way glass, my heart pounding so hard I thought the microphone would pick it up. He came in and sat down. His voice filled the room, familiar, steady, almost tender. "Doctor," he said, "thank you for seeing me this late. Especially tonight." He hesitated, then continued, "I think I'm falling in love with another woman." The words sliced through me. I gripped the edge of my chair until my knuckles turned white. "But I love my wife," he added quickly. "I really do. She's been with me through everything, from the nights when I thought I'd lose the company, to the mornings when I couldn't get out of bed. I owe her everything." And yet, his voice trailed off. I forced myself to breathe. "Maybe what you feel is temporary, an illusion after intimacy," I suggested. Though my throat was dry. "No," he snapped back. "Tonight was our anniversary. She was waiting for me. I knew that. And still, when Emily texted me, I went to her instead. I don't understand why I can't resist her. It feels like she has some kind of power over me." Every word was another knife. The man I had loved for more than a decade sat just a few feet away, confessing his betrayal to me, not knowing it was me. I tried to keep my voice even. "To live between 2 people is to destroy 3. If your love for this other woman is real, then cutting ties with your wife might be the only honest thing to do for her sake as much as yours." His eyes flashed. He stood and paced the room. "No, I can't leave my wife. She was there when no one else was. I can't throw her away." And he stopped, pulling at his tie, lowering his voice. "If anyone ever finds out, I could lose everything I've built. 10 years of work, gone. So you stay with her," I said, unable to hide the bitterness creeping in. "Not because you love her, but because you're afraid of losing your empire. That's not love. That's fear." I regretted the words instantly. My hands shook. He looked at me sharply, suspicion flickering across his face. "You sound personal," he said slowly. "You're a woman. You must sympathize with my wife. Maybe I shouldn't have come tonight. Perhaps I've made you think too much about things that don't concern you." He smiled then, a smile I once thought was meant only for me. "But you see, doctor, I do take care of my wife. 3 years, she's never suspected a thing. Maybe that's my way of loving her." He stood. "Let's end here tonight." I sat paralyzed as he left the room. Only when the door clicked shut did my legs give out. I collapsed into the chair, drenched in sweat though the autumn air outside was cold. My phone buzzed again, a message from my assistant. "Dr. Miller, Mr. Miller just prepaid for the next year of sessions. He also transferred an extra $10,000 to the clinic's account. He said it was your overtime fee tonight." I stared at the message until my vision blurred. Then I hurled the phone against the passenger seat, the crack echoing in the silence of my car. My voice trembled as I called my lawyer. Send me the divorce papers, the ones we drafted 3 years ago. I want them ready tonight. Then, with shaking hands, I opened the airline app and booked a ticket. 1 week from now, to Santa Fe, New Mexico, a place where he would never follow. When I pulled into the driveway that night, David was already there, standing by my car window as if he had been waiting. He opened the door before I could stop him. His face wore that familiar mix of charm and apology he used whenever he needed to disarm me. Claire, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. I'm sorry, the board meeting dragged on, those old men wouldn't let me go, but I'll make it up to you. At the family dinner next month, I'll have them apologize to you personally. If this had been a year ago, I might have believed him. Even yesterday, I might have clung to that lie, but tonight, after hearing him confess in the clinic, after seeing Emily's post, I could barely stand to look at him. I shoved past him, walking straight toward the house. He caught my hand, his voice warmer, gentler. Claire, don't be upset. I know tonight mattered, but the company is in a critical stage. I can't risk stepping away, not even for one night once. I would have melted at those words tonight. They sounded like the same old script. I'm fine, I said quietly. It's cold out. I just want to go inside. Relief flickered in his eyes. He thought he had won. You're always so understanding, he murmured, pulling me into his arms. I'll make it up to you. I promise. His hand lingered at my back. You're shivering. Let's get you warm. Later, in the bedroom. I sat against the headboard with a book while he came out of the shower wrapped in a towel. He turned off the lamp, leaned over me, his breath hot and heavy. I placed my hand against his chest and whispered, David, tonight I want the light on. He froze. His body stiffened against mine. Why? He asked sharply. I reached for the remote, but he grabbed my hand, his voice low, tense. Maybe not tonight. I just remembered something at the office. I should know, I said, my voice trembling with both rage and despair. Not tonight. I yanked the towel from his waist, forcing him to face me. For the first time, he lost his calm. He pulled away roughly, snatched the towel back. His voice was cold. You're out of line. Claire, we both need to cool off. Then he stormed out. Minutes later, I heard the engine of his car, alone in the dark. I bit down on my lip until I tasted blood. The tears came in waves, silent at first, then unstoppable. The next morning, a delivery truck parked outside within an hour. Our yard was filled with flowers, roses, tulips, lilies, an ocean of color in the middle of autumn. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Forgive me. Thousands of dollars in flowers. A show of wealth disguised as love. I stood at the window staring at them, my chest aching. He knew I preferred flowers over jewelry. Yet even now the gesture felt like mockery. Then another message arrived. One that made my blood run cold. From Emily, Mrs. Miller. Did you know? In David's office, there's a bed just for me. We're there now. The code is the day I returned 3 years ago. I'll be waiting. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Outside, the flowers seemed to laugh at me. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to David's company headquarters. Inside, employees smiled warmly as I passed. Mrs. Miller, here with lunch again? Mr. Miller is so lucky, always so thoughtful. No wonder he's softened over the years. Their words pierced me. To them, I was the devoted wife, delivering home-cooked meals. None of them knew the truth. I took the elevator to the top floor. Memories flooded back 5 years ago, when David had first bought this building. He had held me by the window and sworn he would spend his life protecting me. I walked past his desk, past the bookshelves, until I found it, a panel in the wardrobe, a faint glow of red numbers. I typed in Emily's date. The lock clicked open, the hidden door swung inward. The hallway was dim, lined with expensive wood and soft carpets. At the end, I heard voices. David, Emily's voice pleaded, trembling with practiced fragility. I've loved you for 30 years. I only want one thing. A home with you. Is that so much to ask? Why punish me for not being there in the early days? Silence. Then David's voice. Low, aching. Emily? Yes, I punished you. But I also can't stop loving you. That's the truth. My knees buckled. Punishment? Was I nothing but collateral, a substitute wife while he waited for her return? Emily's sobs filled the air. Then stop hurting me. Give me a promise. Tell me when I can finally be Mrs. Miller. David hesitated. then spoke with a resolve he had never used with me. Soon, after the financing deal closes, I'll make it official. The words slammed into me like a hammer. He had never spoken to me with such conviction, not in his proposal, not at our wedding, not in 10 years of marriage. I staggered back, hands shaking, their voices blurred into laughter, whispers, then sounds I could no longer bear to hear. I turned and fled, back home. I printed the divorce papers. I signed them without a second thought and sent them to his office by courier. Then I opened my flight app and changed my ticket. Not a week from now, for hours. I packed 2 bags, enough to last until I found something permanent. As I closed the suitcase, I looked around the house one last time. 10 years of photographs, gifts, promises, all meaningless. I whispered to myself, people don't leave in storms, they leave on quiet afternoons, wearing their favorite coat, and never look back. Then I walked out the door. Meanwhile, David was escorting Emily out of the building, smiling at her tears, promising her a future. But as soon as she left, guilt crashed down on him. Why had he promised her so firmly? He had always prided himself on balance, on control. But this time, he felt something he had not felt in years: fear. He pulled out his phone and dialed Claire's number. No answer. Again. The line remained dead. By the time he returned to his office, a package was waiting. His secretary smiled. Your wife left you something. Maybe another surprise. He opened it. Inside were the divorce papers, her signature sharp and final. At the same moment, his assistant rushed in, pale-faced. Mr. Miller, we discovered something. The therapist you've been seeing these 3 years, it was Claire, your wife. The papers slid from his hands. The words blurred. Divorce agreement. For the first time in his career, David Miller felt the ground give way beneath him. The plane lifted off, the city shrinking beneath the clouds. I kept my phone off until we were in the air. Only then did I power it back on. Hundreds of missed calls, dozens of messages from David. Claire, where are you? I need to see you, please. Don't do this without talking to me. You can't just disappear. We've built a life. You owe me a chance to explain. I was wrong. I admit it. But don't punish us both like this. The messages blurred together. Desperate, angry, pleading. I scrolled quickly, then stopped when I saw the email from my lawyer. David is resisting. He's emotional. If negotiations fail, we will proceed with litigation. I closed the phone and shoved it into the seat pocket. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to answer. When the flight attendant offered dinner, I surprised myself by saying yes. David had always waved the meals away, claiming airplane food was beneath him. But when the tray landed in front of me, I picked up the plastic fork and tasted it. The house waited at the end, painted a warm shade of terracotta, with blue shutters and a wooden porch. When I stepped inside, I dropped my bags on the floor and let myself collapse onto the bed. Sleep took me instantly. By the time I woke, night had fallen. My phone lit up with hundreds more notifications. David's name filled the screen. His words had shifted from panic to anger to despair. Claire, I deserve to talk to you, Claire. You can't just erase me like this. Claire, please. I can't do this without you. I read a few, then turned the phone off again. The silence of the desert wrapped around me. For the first time, I realized how loud my old life had been. The buzzing of phones, the endless demands, the constant negotiation between my needs and his. Here, there was only stillness. I stood on the porch, looking out at the vast, star-strewn sky. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. I wrapped my arms around myself and whispered, I'm really gone. The next morning, I unpacked simple clothes, a few books, my laptop, the lifeline to the clinic I had left behind. My assistant Lisa had agreed to manage the day-to-day, and most of my work could continue remotely. For hours, I reorganized the small house, arranging furniture, filling cabinets, setting up my desk by the window where sunlight poured in. It felt strange. For years, my life had revolved around David's schedule, his moods, his demands. Now, every decision was mine. At noon, I made myself a sandwich, just bread, cheese, tomatoes, and mustard. I ate it slowly, marveling at how satisfying it was. No elaborate dinners, no formal table settings, just food, plain and enough. That afternoon, the phone rang again. Lisa's voice came through, calm but strained. Claire, he came to the office. David, he demanded all your session files, every recording, every note. I had no choice but to give them. He knows everything now. I closed my eyes, steadying myself. Thank you, Lisa. Don't worry. This isn't your fault. After I hung up, my hands trembled. He knew. He had seen every video, every transcript of my voice guiding him, questioning him, holding his secrets. For 3 years, I had been both wife and stranger, confidant and ghost, and now he would see it all, the truth I had hidden even from myself. I braced for another flood of calls, another storm of words. But when the phone stayed silent that night, I realized he was processing, and I was free. Days passed, slowly. I built a rhythm, morning walks through the dusty trails, watching the sunrise paint the desert pink and gold, afternoons working with patience over video calls, my voice steady even as theirs cracked with grief or fear. Evenings cooking simple meals, sitting on the porch with a glass of wine, listening to the silence. At first, the quiet frightened me, then it became a balm. Each night, I checked my phone, more messages from David, fewer each day, some begging, some angry, some resigned. I read them with the detachment of a doctor observing a patient. He was unraveling, and I no longer felt responsible. One morning, I received a letter from the law firm. David has agreed to revise the divorce settlement. Significant assets will be transferred to you. Please review and confirm. I skimmed the terms, half the company's shares, multiple properties, enough money to secure me for life. But wealth had never been what I wanted. What I wanted was peace. Still, I signed, not because I needed the money, but because it was the cleanest way to end things. I sent the papers back and closed the file. That evening, as the sun set over the desert, I sat on the porch and whispered aloud, "I'm not his wife anymore." The words were both terrifying and liberating. I thought of the woman I used to be, the one who waited by the window for his car lights, who cooked his favorite meals, who believed every excuse, who swallowed every suspicion. She was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who ate airplane food without apology, someone who chose mustard because she liked it, not because it was his preference, someone who no longer needed to be defined by a man's promises. And yet, I knew David was not done. Men like him never accepted defeat easily. A week later, the knock came, hard, insistent, echoing through the adobe walls. When I opened the door, he stood there. David? He looked exhausted, unshaven, eyes dark with sleeplessness. For the first time in a decade, he looked smaller than I remembered. "Claire," he rasped, "why did you do this? Why did you run?" I gripped the doorframe, steadying myself. His presence, once so overwhelming, now felt like an intruder's shadow on my threshold. "You shouldn't be here," I said quietly. "Not anymore." He stood in the doorway, looking nothing like the man who used to dominate every room. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, his eyes red. "Claire," he said again, softer this time, "don't send me away. Not like this." I crossed my arms, leaning against the frame. My pulse was steady. A year ago, I would have been trembling. Now, all I felt was a tired clarity. "You traveled 1,000 miles. I said, "Why? To convince me to stay? To beg? Or to control me one more time?" His jaw tightened. "I came because I can't lose you. You're my wife." I shook my head. "No, David, I was your wife. Not anymore." He stepped inside before I could stop him. His eyes scanned the small adobe home, the books stacked neatly, the single glass of wine on the table. His expression twisted: sadness, regret, disbelief. 10 years, he whispered, "and I never really knew you. You never tried." I replied, my voice was calm, even. "You only saw what you needed me to be, the patient wife, the silent support, the woman who waited while you chased someone else." He flinched, but I didn't stop. "You ask why I left. Let me answer. I was your therapist, David, for 3 years. Every time you confessed how much you loved Emily, I was the one listening. Every time you justified betraying me, I was the one sitting across from you." His mouth fell open, his face strained of color. "That was you." His voice cracked. "Claire." "My God, yes. And do you know what it did to me? To sit there, pretending to be a stranger, while the man I married confessed his affair like it was poetry? You broke me long before I walked out." He stumbled back, sinking into a chair. His hands shook as he ran them through his hair. "I didn't know," he whispered. "If I'd known, you'd have hidden it better." I cut in, "That's all." Silence stretched between us outside. The desert wind rattled the windows. Finally, he looked up, desperation in his eyes. "Claire, I can fix this. I'll give you everything. The company, the houses, the money. Just don't leave me. Don't throw away what we built." I almost laughed. You still don't understand. I don't want your empire. I don't want a castle built on lies. What I want is a life where I don't have to beg for respect. You love what I did for you. You love the way I made you feel safe, admired, forgiven. But you never loved me. Not the real me. He shook his head violently. That's not true, Claire. I stopped. I raised my hand. If you stay here 1 minute longer, I'll call the police. This isn't your home. Not anymore. For a moment, I thought he would defy me. Then his shoulders slumped. He looked older than his years, broken in a way I had never seen. Claire, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Don't let this be the end. It already is. He left that night. I locked the door behind him and collapsed onto the couch, my whole body trembling. But it wasn't fear. It was release. For years, I had dreamed of this moment, the day I would finally stop hoping, stop forgiving, stop carrying the weight of his choices. Now it was here, and it was mine. The next morning, my lawyer called. Claire, the settlement papers have been finalized. David signed. Half the shares, the properties, all transferred to you. He insisted. I sighed. Send them through. I'll sign. When I opened the email later, I saw his message at the bottom. Claire, don't refuse. This is all I can give you now. I failed you in every way, but I want you to be secure. Please take it. Please remember me kindly. I stared at the screen for a long time. Once, those words would have torn me apart. Now, they were just echoes. I signed, not because I wanted his gifts, but because it was the cleanest end. 3 months later, David held a press conference. It made national headlines. He admitted the affair. He admitted betraying his wife. He told the world the divorce was his fault alone. He said no man should forget the woman who stood by him in his hardest years. For once, I believed his words, not because they absolved him, but because they weren't meant for me. They were meant for himself, and for the empire he was desperate to protect. My phone exploded with messages, friends, colleagues, even strangers, offering sympathy, outrage, support. I read none of them. Instead, I walked to the shore of a small lake near my home. The water glistened in the afternoon sun. I held my phone in my hand for a long time, then tossed it into the water. The ripples spread outward, then stilled. From now on, I was not Mrs. David Miller. I was not anyone's shadow. I was just Claire. And that was enough. The days after the press conference were strangely quiet. For years, my life had been tethered to David's orbit, his calls, his moods, his schedules. Now, the silence felt vast, like stepping into an open desert with no map. At first, I worried I would drown in it. But the longer I lived in Santa Fe, the more the silence became a companion. I reopened my clinic remotely, setting up virtual sessions for clients across the country. Some were old patients who had followed me for years, others were new, drawn in by word of mouth. Dr. Miller, one woman said during our first video call, I don't know how to move on after my husband left. I feel like I wasted 20 years. Her words pierced me, but I didn't flinch. I leaned closer to the screen. You didn't waste them, I told her. You lived them, you learned, and now you get to choose how to live the next 20. Each session became a mirror. Their pain reflected my own, and my answers to them echoed back to me. Healing, I realized, wasn't a single act. It was a daily choice. On weekends, I explored. I walked through art markets where local painters sold desert landscapes. I hiked trails that wound into red canyons, the silence broken only by birdsong and the crunch of gravel underfoot. I tried food trucks, pottery classes, even salsa dancing, though I tripped over my own feet more than once. One evening, after a pottery class, I found myself laughing with a group of women around my age. Claire, one of them said, handing me a cup of wine, you should join us next Saturday. We're doing a hike at sunrise. I hesitated. For years, I had lived in David's shadow, every social moment tied to his calendar. The idea of building my own friendships felt foreign, but I smiled. I'd like that. The hikes became a ritual. We talked about everything: work, family, health, dreams we'd buried and were slowly unearthing. None of us were young, but none of us felt old either. We were just alive. For the first time in a decade, I felt what it meant to belong without being owned. David's messages eventually stopped. The lawyers closed the case. The world moved on. One evening, I sat by the lake again, the same one where I had thrown my phone months ago. The water rippled gently in the breeze. I thought about the girl I had been when I married him, eager, hopeful, willing to lose herself in the promise of forever. I thought about the woman who had sat in that therapy room, listening to her husband confess his love for another. And I thought about the person I was now, sitting here alone, not broken but whole. I whispered aloud, I'm free. Months later, my clinic was thriving. I had published a series of essays on resilience and relationships, and they gained attention online. Invitations came to podcasts, to conferences, to panels on women's mental health. The first time I stood on stage in front of hundreds of women, I felt my hands tremble. But when I began to speak, the words flowed. I'm not here to tell you how to save your marriage, I said. I'm here to tell you how to save yourself. Because no one deserves to live in the shadows of someone else's choices. We are not defined by betrayal. We are defined by how we rise after it. The applause was long, warm, overwhelming. I stepped off the stage and realized tears were streaming down my face, not of grief, but of gratitude. I never remarried, not because I closed myself to love, but because I no longer needed it to validate me. If love came, it would have to meet me where I stood, not as half of a whole, but as a whole meeting another. On my 10th month in Santa Fe, I stood on my porch at sunrise, a cup of coffee in hand. The sky blazed with pink and orange. The air was cool, the scent of sage sharp and clean. I thought of David, wherever he was now. I didn't hate him anymore. Hate was just another chain, and I had cut enough of those. I wished him well, quietly, in the way you wish well to someone you once knew but no longer needed. Then I turned back inside. My laptop waited, my patience waited, my life waited. I was no longer the woman waiting at a window for headlights in the driveway. I was no longer the secret therapist holding her own marriage together in silence. I was Claire Miller, independent, steady, whole, and this was only the beginning. That's all for today's story. Thank you for listening. This is my channel. The tales I share, drawn from life or woven from imagination, are meant to offer you connection, reflection, and perhaps solace or newfound strength. If you long to see your own reflection in others' journeys, or seek a glimmer of light within the maze of emotions, subscribe to my channel. Listen with your heart. Explore the stories of life.